You know, when you read his CV, it's a kind of CV, you not only want to bring back to mom, but you kind of also want to bring back to dad. Because it's kind of like got all the right things that mom will go, wow, very good, okay, Oxford scholar, Rhodes scholar,
What's wrong with
scholar, all these very good things, okay? And then when you take them to dad, dad's like, wow, badass, wow, Olympic athlete, wow, swim the channel, only Singaporean to do so. Like, totally badass. So anyway, you can read his really amazing list of accolades. But I think the one thing that has been really interesting for me is discovering this new podcast that he's put out called The History of Singapore. All 50 episodes, right? 52?
We're currently at 46.
46 episodes. Can you imagine? As far as I understand, he's been watched by certain people up there. Only because he's telling actual fact, you see. So it's kind of interesting. But anyway, without further ado, please join me in welcoming on stage Dr. PJ Tam with his story of a KFC, body fat, and crossing the English Channel. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all of you for joining us today. Thank you to the organizers for inviting me here. It's a real honor to be here and to be alongside such a great panel of speakers, and I'm really looking forward to hearing their stories as well. So, in 2004, I decided to swim the English Channel. And the reason why I chose to do it was not just for me, and it wasn't just to raise money for charity, but it was also to show that Singaporeans can do great things. No Singaporean had ever swum the English Channel, no Singaporean had even tried. And so, around the time of Singapore's 40th National Day in August 2005, I would swim the English Channel and show the world that Singaporeans can also do great things. We can dream big, we can achieve big. Now, to put it in some context, right, the challenge of the channel, since 1953, by comparison, around 3,500 people have climbed Mount Everest. But since 1875, around 1,600 people, that's fewer than half as many, in twice the amount of time, have swum the English Channel. Indeed, until around 1980, the number of people who had gone to outer space was only a little less than the number of people who had swum the English Channel. So that's kind of the challenge we're thinking about. And the challenge of the channel is not really the distance, right? It's 35 kilometers from Dover to Calais, which is a very long distance. But the real challenge is the cold. The channel, even in summer, is 16 degrees Celsius. Maybe with global warming, it's a bit warmer now, but fundamentally that's the challenge. And that is lower than the lowest setting of your air conditioner. The human body, 16 is less than half human body temperature. The human body goes into hypothermia at 35 degrees Celsius, and I was going to get into water that was 16 degrees Celsius. So that's the challenge. But the problem is, you're not allowed to wear a wetsuit. You're not allowed to wear anything that will keep you warm. You're only allowed to wear suits, one suit, a normal swimming costume, goggles, and cap. That's it. And the reason for that is because the first crosser of the channel, I mentioned 1875, was a Victorian. And he swam across in 1875 in a wool suit with a cap and a big handlebar moustache. And nowadays, the handlebar moustache is optional. But the rest of it is compulsory. That's the entire challenge. One suit, one goggles, one cap. 35 kilometers, 16 Celsius. So in order to make it across, then you need to keep yourself warm. You need to put on lots of body fat. Because if you smear on something external, goose fat or something, it will wash off. And it will wash off right at the moment when you need it the most. So you need to put on lots of body fat. And that was what I sought to do as I was training for the channel. So I would eat and eat and eat, and then I would train and train and train. And I was swimming up to 8 hours a day in Dover Harbour to try and build up my endurance. But here's the paradox, right? when you train, you burn body fat. So I would eat and eat and eat and build up body fat, and then train and train and train, and then burn it all off. And I got really worried, how on earth am I going to swim across the English Channel when it's so cold without body fat? So I began to do desperate things. I would buy 2 dozen boxes of Krispy Kreme donuts, 24 Krispy Kreme donuts, and eat it all in one sitting. I did that regularly. I just picked up, it was disgusting. But at my worst point, a few weeks before I swam, I was so worried that I bought an entire KFC family-size meal. You know, the 2 big buckets of chicken, the 3 mashed potato, the 2 Pepsi or Coca-Cola bottles, 1 liter. And I just ate the whole thing in one sitting. And I got so sick afterwards, but I could not let myself throw up because I needed the body fat. But I just could not put it on. So by the time I got around to swimming the channel on the 5th of August 2005, I was actually really worried I just wasn't fat enough. But I was going to do it anyway. And I got in and I started shivering almost immediately. But I was doing quite well. For the first 4 or 5 hours, I was swimming quite fast. I was sticking to the pace that I thought I could do. And then the weather changed, and the weather got really bad. You see, your time across the channel is not really dependent on your ability, it's more dependent on the weather. So 4 or 5 hours in, the winds whipped up to force 5, for those of you who understand wind measurement. Huge waves were coming and crashing down on me. I was being tossed about. It was like being in a washing machine. I was swallowing so much salt water. I felt sick, I was throwing up. And I thought I wasn't going to make it. I was sure I wasn't going to make it. When you cross the channel, this is how it works, right? You have to hire a boat and a pilot who is specially trained to bring you across. So you follow the boat as you go, right? You cannot see France from the water. You can only see this boat. Your whole world is just a horizon and this boat. And if you want to quit, you have to swim to the boat and touch the boat. That's how you signal that you give up. You touch the boat. If you touch the boat by accident at any time, you're disqualified. So you have to avoid the boat. But if you want to quit, you have to touch the boat. And as I was there in the water, right, thinking I was not going to make it, thinking that this was it, I said to myself, well, if you want to give up, you still have to swim to the boat. And if you can swim to the boat, at least you can swim that far. So let's just swim to the boat and then see what happens. So I swam to the boat. And of course, by the time I swam to where the boat was, the boat had moved on. So I said to myself, well, can I still swim to the boat? Because if I want to give up, I still have to swim to the boat. And my body said, yes, you can swim to the boat. So I swam to the boat, and of course the boat had moved on. But that was how I began to keep myself going. I said to myself, can you swim to the boat? Yes, okay, let's swim to the boat. And over time, that distance in my mind got shorter and shorter, halfway to the boat, a quarter of the way to the boat, to the point where I was saying to myself, can you take one more stroke? And my body would say, yes, I can take one more stroke. And I would take one more stroke. Can you take one more stroke? Yes, I can take one more stroke. And my whole world shrank down to just one stroke. And during this time, of course, I thought about a lot of things to keep me going. I thought about Singapore. I thought about all the people I would let down if I didn't make it. I thought about my family. And most of all, I thought about my dad. Because you see, it was my dad who started me on this path, on swimming. And without him, I would never have gotten into it. He believed in this Greek ideal of mens sano in corpore sano. Although he would not have put it in those words, a healthy mind and a healthy body. One cannot exist without the other. So in addition to my academic work, my academic studies, he believed very strongly I had to be physically fit. So he got me into swimming because I was terrible at everything else. No hand-eye coordination, couldn't do ball sports, was terrible on that. So he got me into swimming. At least if you fall in water, you can swim. But he was also a very dominant person. He was a slave driver. He pushed me really, really hard. And he dominated my life and pushed me to great heights. And after he died in 2002, I was really bereft. I had this big, loud voice in my head for so many years, and now it was gone. And I didn't know what to do with my life. I was quite lost, and it took me a while to pick up the pieces. And so when I chose to swim the English Channel, it wasn't just for the achievement. It wasn't just for me, for all those other reasons I talked about. It wasn't just to honor my dad, but it was to prove to myself that I could do this. It was for me. And I could not let myself give up. And so there I was in the water, thinking that I was going to fail. And I was just going one stroke at a time, convinced I was so, but I was going to fail because my body physically could not do it. I was not going to fail because I chose to fail. I was going to fail because I physically could not swim anymore. At some point, I would say, can I take one more stroke? And my body would say, no, you cannot take one more stroke. And I would start drowning. And I would hope that the boat would be able to turn around fast enough to pull me out of the water before I drowned. And the first time that I realized I was going to make it to France was when I brought my hand down and I hit sand. And I realized, oh my God, I made it! And, you know, it was at this point I realized, oh, I didn't have something to say. Because the media, Channel News Asia is on the beach with a camera waiting for me. I better have something to say when I walk up the beach. Because, you know, it's like Neil Armstrong, right? When he reached the moon, he said, one small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind. It's a great line, but he didn't think it up on the spot. He must have thought it up before. I think he said he's thought it up beforehand. And so the whole way there, he was rehearsing it. From Earth to the moon, one small step for a man, one giant leap. All the way down from the space shuttle to on the lander, one small step for man. Climbing down the ladder, you know, one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Okay, this is climbing down. Okay, don't screw it up, Neil, don't screw it up. I'm a small man with a giant. Oh. One small man, two giant. Oh. So you get the idea. When I reached France, I realized, okay, I better say something. The media is there. I want to inspire Singapore. I better say something. And so in my mind, this is what happened. I arose from the water. I ran heroically towards the camera. And the camera was there, and I said, I did it for Singapore. The problem is, I was in so much pain that I didn't have a clear idea what was going on. So when I watched the video, this is what actually happened. I did it for Singapore. So, it was just so much pain, and it wasn't until I swam on a Saturday. It wasn't until the next Thursday I could just do this. 5 days just to lift my arms. But when I look back, I realize I learned a really, really important lesson. When you dream big, when you dream something truly audacious, almost by definition, you can't see where you're going, you can't see where the goal is. It's very daunting, it's very difficult, but anything great is going to be huge. But if you break it down into little tasks, little goals, little things that you can accomplish every day you ask myself, every moment you ask yourself, what is the one thing I can do right now that will bring me closer to achieving my goal? What is the one decision I can make right now that will help me be the person I want to be? And then you do that one thing, and then the next thing, and the next. And eventually, over time, all those little things add up to one big thing. And before you know it, you bring your arm down and you hit sand. And so, when people ask me, how did you swim the channel? 12 hours, 24 minutes. I tell them, one stroke at a time. Thank you very much.